Hello and cheers. Welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Lauren and today I'm going to be reacting to Firearms Expert, reacting to Bioshock Infinite's guns. I have my fancy martini glass here, just because, mostly because there's blue in it. And I'm like, that's Bioshocky. I don't remember if there's Eve in Bioshock Infinite, but there is in Bioshock 1 and 2, so that is the vibe I'm going for here. But yeah, no, I enjoyed his Jonathan's videos on Bioshock 1 and 2. The link for that should be at the end if you want to watch that as well. But I enjoy the Bioshock video games. I have played through the first one. I haven't yet started playing through the second, but I do plan on playing 2 and Infinite. I have access to them. So I'm curious to see what he's going to tell me about the guns that I'm going to see when I do play Bioshock Infinite. I really hope you enjoy this video. If you want to see more stuff like this, if you want to see more specific things by Jonathan himself, I know that some people wanted to see Halo, but if you want to see anything in particular, just go ahead and let me know in the comments below, and make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. It really, really helps us know that this is in fact the kind of thing you want to see. So, without any further ado, let us go and see what he's got to say about these guns from Bioshock Infinite. And now, remember, it has been a long time since I've witnessed anything from this game, so I will probably have less to say about it than I might have about Bioshock 1.
This is Jonathan Ferguson, the keeper of firearms
Hello.
and artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And this week we've got the follow-up to our time in Rapture by soaring up to the sky in the vast world of Columbia in Bioshock Infinite.
Oh, I do like Murder of Crows. Good fun. I'd like to be able to do that in real life.
Oh yeah,
Summon crows.
Yeah.
that is my favorite of the the salts that you can use in Infinite is the Murder of Crows. I say my favorite that you can use. I mean, it's my favorite I've seen be used, and I also wish that I could summon crows.
To attack people, specifically. Right.
Let us know what other games or guns you'd like to see Jonathan break down, and be sure to subscribe for more Firearms Expert Reacts, as well as videos from several of our other experts. Right, over to Jonathan.
Ooh, I saw a sword guy. Okay, well that's something for me to think about. Scheisse.
Now this is, although stylized, pretty clearly a Mauser C96, sometimes called the broomhandle, for this reason. I've chosen it because it looked quite sort of war weary, and some nice sort of patina on it, and I don't know, it seemed to fit the game. But the version we have here is the sort of special edition with gold and decoration on it. So we have a really good collection of C96s here, but don't have any gold plated or gold damascened ones, unfortunately. So this will have to do. But it has the short barrel and has the full-size frame, which is what I'm seeing here and what I remember playing when I played this game. Incidentally, I did write a small book on the C96 if you're interested. It's an Osprey book. So Mauser knew about detachable magazines, of course, and they looked at incorporating one early on in the 20th century. Didn't do it in the end until the model 1930, which is the sort of product improved redesign of the whole family, and it added the push button on the side of the frame and a detachable box magazine. But the game version, I mean, it has a lot of the lines are there. Most of the lines are there. The proportions, the cutout shape of the ejection port area, the extractor on top of the bolt is there. The way it operates with the hammer, square section bolts, it's basically all there. It's rapid fire. It's relatively powerful for a pistol, just as the real thing was. Celebrated in its day for penetration that the 7.63x25 cartridge could deliver, and 10 shots as well. 10 shots when revolvers were still the standard with 6 shots. So not quite a world beater, but a trailblazer, I think we can say.
Yeah,
Fits
cool.
the aesthetic of Bioshock Infinite absolutely perfectly. I would have gone with this as well. They did look at the Luger. I remember seeing the concept art for that, and they were looking at a stylized Luger when they went with the stylized broom handle, and I'm glad that they did. As far as shooting goes, in the virtual version, it pretty much works as it ought to. The sights are a bit exaggerated. So here we've got one missing at the front, and we've got a normal height rear sight.
Ooh, see, I'm also noticing like the reticle in this is much smaller than the reticle in 1 and 2. So it does look like if I'm going to play this game, and now I'm just like looking for hints and tips on how to play this game, I'm going to have to be a lot more precise with my aiming, which is not great for me.
Quite typical early 20th century or late 19th century sights. Very, very small thing inside a very, very small thing. Very hard to be accurate with that unless you're really taking your time. The game sights are almost the other way. They're almost like suppressor height. They have a really big Winchester buckhorn style on a rifle rear sight and a very tall front sight. The big departure, I guess, is the lever on the side here, which is thumb operated, and it throws the magazine clear. So even with the detachable magazine broom handles, you have to press the button and pull out the detachable magazine. With this thing, it's in a way a little bit sci-fi because you've got a lever you hit and it chucks out the magazine, so you could be doing like a tactical reload with the thing. On the downside, it makes the gun bulkier, a little bit heavier, and perhaps reliability? Probably not. All very speculative, but it's nice to see a broom handle, even if it's a sort of fantasy version. Now, this is relatively unusual because I don't have to speculate what this submachine gun is based upon. I remember back in the day playing this and not really being sure and thinking it was completely made up. Well, I know better, thanks to the concept art that was released for the game, because there's no argument over this. This is the Czech ZK383 submachine gun.
Ooh.
And what's really, really exciting about it in terms of, well, from an art and a design perspective, even if it might irk the purists amongst us, but this is a parallel reality, right? So you can see the design process they went through, turning it from essentially a pretty faithful ZK383, so long, slim barrel shroud. The magazine actually angles upward. So it's an unusual design in that respect.
Oh,
not only did they make the
okay.
barrel shroud short, squat, and fat, change the proportions of just about everything. The cocking handle's still on the left side, but it's higher up. It's a more of a early Sten style knob on there. They actually canted the magazine housing substantially downward, so they reversed this arrangement.
I do wish that he showed us like some of the concept art that he was talking about seeing. Like I would like to see how it went from this to the thing in the game. Also, I really like the holes. I know that they probably have a purpose, but he hasn't told me what they are yet. And I've always enjoyed that aesthetic when I've seen it on a gun. I've always enjoyed that aesthetic, even if I'm not entirely sure what it does. It's a balance thing, maybe? I don't know.
And then exaggerated it even more, which gives you more of a field of view, I suppose, and it makes it a very distinctive alternative history sort of design. So I can't really argue with that. As much as I like my guns to be historically accurate, there's not really any need for that in this game. Now the real one has this really quite unusual bipod arrangement. Bipods on submachine gun are not very common for obvious reasons. This one has one built in. Now that didn't make it through to the final design, but I wanted to show you that. This one has a sling on it, which is unusual.
Why for obvious reasons? Is the obvious reason that you're not usually setting up anywhere? You're usually just carrying it around and firing it? Because if that's the obvious reason, I mean, I guess I can see that. He's like, oh, it's obvious. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't understand.
Nice to have. And this is a Venezuelan contract example. So it has the Venezuelan crest, nice markings, it's in great condition. Now you can see if you're thinking, wow, they've changed it so much, it's not a ZK383. Well, as well as configuration things like the rear.
Oh, okay. I am seeing now, like, it is a little shorter. Okay, now that he's showing us more footage from the game, I am seeing, like, okay, yeah, the muzzle thing is a little shorter. I can see where I can see the differences and also the similarities to it now.
Side face being on top of the magazine housing, which is preserved, and the general sort of appearance is still there. It's almost like a caricature version. The magazine housing and this very long magazine catch is basically still the same. The short magazine is sort of retained. In the game, it's got a 16 round capacity, which looks about right for how short it is in the game. You probably don't want to be holding it by the magazine, but I think with this design, that would be unlikely to cause you any issues.
So, Elizabeth?
Oh, nice. Okay. That guy can take a damage.
There are actually two variants of this gun, which I'd completely forgotten. Generally
Either that guy is just like a bullet sponge, or this gun sucks.
very similar. The sights are different. The cocking handle's different. The rate of fire is noticeably slower. One very strange thing about this, and I guess it's because the drum magazine is meant to be a visual difference rather than a technical difference, but typically drum magazines are bigger, well, they just are bigger than box magazines. That's the whole reason for having them, is that they can contain more rounds. But here, this variant of the gun has a smaller capacity, despite having the visibly larger magazine. So that's curious. That might actually be an error. I don't know. The good old Winchester 1887, or at least a parallel version of it. Again, recognizably the real world firearm, and suits the sort of retro futuristic setting very nicely. Well, it has a long rib down the barrel, as you can see, flange at the front, and a sort of rib partway down, bit of decoration as well. It's a little bit embellished design-wise in a way that doesn't add any functionality and isn't purely decorative. It's sort of self-conscious.
I like the little dances that they do and like whatever he's hitting them with here.
Different. Effects-wise, the spread looks pretty massive on this. Now, it does have quite a short barrel. What we find in reality with shotguns is once the choke is either removed or cut off, don't try this at home, the length of barrel makes very little difference to the spread of shots in the scheme of things. It's not proportionate in any means to how much you cut the barrel down. Obviously, if you get too short, the pressure drops way low, the pellets may well spread out. I'm reminded of the hot horseshoes, hot dogs and hand grenades gun from the other week. Let's not dwell on that.
Now I want to see what like caused that reaction, honestly. I just keep getting so like sucked into like the action. I'm not looking at the gun anymore, and I'm like, wait, no, I want to see what he's gonna say about it.
We're on the rail transport system, and so one hand is taken up, and we're doing a bit of a riff on the T2 / John Wayne flip cocking, but we're just flipping the gun forwards and then back into the hand. So we're not doing the very stylish full sweep. Now that's actually quite interesting, because if you don't have the large loop that allows it to rotate around your knuckles without breaking your fingers, and you absolutely had to try and cock it with one hand, then that might well be how you do it, because you could use the mass of the gun to flip itself forward and then flick it back into your hand. I don't particularly want to try that. I don't recommend that you do, but in a life or death situation, just might work.
All right, that's interesting to know. Get him. All right, so let's look at.
Right, we have a revolver here. Another great choice for the setting, a sort of an old west style. Well, let's be honest, this is meant to be a Colt Navy percussion revolver. That's why it has these notches at the back of the cylinder. That's how it works.
Oh, cool. Okay.
You put a cap on the back of each of these nipples in these cutouts, and that's your priming system. And then you load from the front of the cylinder your propellant and your bullet. Typically, historically, that was done with a paper or animal skin cartridge, and you would put that in place, position it under the rammer, ram it down, and then cap. Do that 6 times or 5 times, depending, and then add your caps.
That would take a long time.
Single action, i.e., cock and fire. Now, I've grabbed this one. This is an 1851 Navy model revolver. It's an early type with this enlarged oval-shaped trigger guard, which is a nod from me toward the really wacky trigger guard that's on this Bioshock gun. Now, I didn't even remember that being on the gun, because in first person, you don't see it. It just looks more like a Colt Navy. Now, I think it's called a hand cannon, and it's implied to be, it feels sort of meaty and powerful. Substantial differences, though. So the sight that would normally be just a notch on the hammer has been much enlarged and located here. Now, we do have percussion revolvers that have sights mounted here.
I have noticed that like the guns in this in the Bioshock universe do like those sights that are kind of up more on the barrel there. Like, and he's mentioned this several times now. It's like, well, the sights aren't actually there, and like he shows out. It's like sometimes maybe, but like I feel like almost every single gun in Bioshock has those like pronged sights. Sorry, UK people. I wasn't flipping anybody off.
Yeah, but this is not one of them. The barrel is hexagonal, I think, not octagonal, and it has a weird ejector rod housing under the barrel and is a cartridge revolver. We do have cartridge conversions of the Navy as well as others. They still don't look like this, and they would not preserve these cutouts in the cylinder that are left on this design quite consciously as again, a bit of visual interest. Doesn't...
Okay, yeah, so he's like just slamming the bullets in from the back, which is what he said. That's not how you actually would fire, reload this gun. But it does make more sense for a game.
Quite makes sense in terms of neither being fully cartridge nor is it a percussion, but it looks very cool and I still like it.
I also really appreciate how Jonathan here, he's like, it's not quite right, but it still looks cool, so I'm fine with it. I'm like, that's a fun take. I enjoy that. It's like, yes, it's not quite right, but we can still have fun. Like, some people are a little too pedantic and they're like, it's not correct and therefore it's terrible. It's like, no, we can relax. It's a game.
Got the bonus. Fine show. Fine show. Follow those locks and waiting magnificent display of marksmanship.
Okay, this is a slightly out of proportion M1 carbine with some metal plates riveted to it. Not too wildly different than the real M1 carbine. It's just that the buttstock is huge and really long, and the guy's got it under his arm, which is irking my brain. Well, maybe he doesn't know how to hold a gun. It's quite possible. His hand is also clipping through the buttstock like it's meant to be a pistol grip. The magazine is also bigger than it ought to be. The front sight hood is immense and enclosed. Probably can't see on this one, but it shouldn't be. So what have I pulled out? Well, clearly this is not an ordinary M1 carbine either. This is a T4 experimental forerunner of the M2 carbine, which is the select fire version of the M1, as I'm sure a lot of you know. So instead of the knob-shaped switch, it has this wedge-shaped selector switch here. And then even more interesting, it's actually fitted with spirit-level grenade sights that pivot to allow you to aim your rifle grenade. And then at the front, a grenade launcher. It's a spigot-type launcher.
Nice. What is the spirit sight that he was talking about? I don't know what that is.
That's just held on by, well, a spring clip essentially, and it's got numbers for ranges, and it's set. You basically set it at the distance
cool
you want, so it's getting less powder burn or more powder burn depending on where it's set.
That's
so
really,
that's
I like that.
yards.
That's really cool.
That's 100 yards. So doubly unusual and even more wacky than Bioshock gun. Now in first person view, we've got the true to at least some variants of the M1. Now I'm seeing the sight protectors. They're actually not enclosed. They're just huge. They are roughly of the right pattern. There's a very strange projection on the left side of the receiver. Doesn't seem to do anything. It almost looks like it's acting as a stop for the cocking handle, which wouldn't be needed. I don't know. It's there. It's there to look cool, I think.
Ooh. Fun.
So our second variant of this rifle, and incidentally, the cartridge cases coming out of this thing look about right for .30 carbine, even though the magazine looks significantly larger. Anyway, the important thing is this variant has a weird reflex sight with a sort of hand-drawn cross on the glass. Seems to be a bit of a fetish of video game firearms designers, scopes with hand-drawn reticles, even though the rest of the sight is kind of properly made. Probably my only real criticism there. And it has a sort of barrel jacket, and that's because, like our T4 prototype I just showed you, this is in fact automatic. So it's a sort of extended range submachine gun, I guess. I really don't remember this from the game, but it was a long time ago that I played it. I'm gathering from this that it's actually burst, so it's mechanically controlled burst fire rather than just automatic.
I wonder if some of the things that he doesn't quite remember from the game, he doesn't remember it because they're bad guns. Like, and he didn't use them. You know, like there's certain guns that's like, there's certain like weapons from Bioshock that was like, I got that thing, but I almost never used it because it didn't work for me. So I wonder if some of these like guns that he's talking about now, the reasons that he's like, I don't even remember it being in the game, is because they were just like, it's not worth it.
I also realised for the first time that the weird projection on the left side of the receiver is on both sides, or at least it is on this. Okay. And it really does look like it's there to interface somehow with the cocking handle as it comes back. But I don't know why.
Aesthetic. Okay.
Now, this is quite a generic bolt-action rifle. Mauser action, I think we can safely say that. Brings to mind the 1903 Springfield. Maybe it's just the America in the sky sort of setting. The front sight and barrel setup almost looks like 1917 Enfield. The cocking piece at the back reminds me of the Arasaka. So I'd say it's a non-specific bolt-action rifle. It's taking advantage of the Mauser-style receiver to mount a scope over the bore, which looks completely normal, really. The scope itself is a bit stylized with needless brass bits on it, and it functions basically like we'd expect as a scoped rifle. Slow rate of fire, high damage.
I don't think it's a needless brass. Like, it's pretty. It looks cool. Like, everything in Columbia is about the aesthetic. So, like, it's not needless. It's not doing anything necessarily, but you know what? If it helps my mental health to look at a pretty ornament, then, you know, that's doing something that's important.
If I had any criticism of it in a sort of real world sense, the scope seems very high. It might be the perspective that makes it seem very high over the bore, because I don't think you could mount it much lower on the weapon, but relative to the buttstock, it seems quite high up, so it'd be hard to, you kind of want a cheek piece, and I think the stock has a cheek piece to bring your head up.
Huge kickback on that gun.
The eye box of the scope. I also didn't seem to have proper feed lips and distinct modeled cartridges in there, but the game is a few years old now.
All right, so did like the guns you get in this one not have like the upgrades that you can do? Because that was a cool part of the Bioshock games and what he was talking about. It's like explaining how the upgrades that you can do like made sort of sense, or like how they didn't, or like, you know, like that was a cool part of the last video I saw. So I'm just wondering, I guess there's no upgrades in this one. You just get the gun that you get.
Ammo, take it.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Great.
Yay, get him.
Now this is a bit of this reminds me of Team Fortress or something, where the mechanism and the reload is just sort of hand waved, and you just open it up, shove something in, close it as your reload. I like the look
That's
of it
fair.
and the way it functions in the game. I also like the whistle of the bombs or grenades or whatever they are as they fly through the air. It reminds me of the whiz bang shells from the First World War or something. So it's a not a very realistic gun, but still a good gun.
Who's sneaking around?
All right.
I'll bleed you out.
And as with
Okay, so it looks like this time it was an upgrade. So sometimes you got an upgrade, it looks like. Or I think I answered.
a lot of the other weapons, there's an alternative faction version. In this case, mainly differentiated by having some pointless strips of red fabric wrapped around the barrels. But the overall design is less ornate. In fact, the variant guns have completely different skins. They don't change the silhouette, but they do change the design in basically every detail.
Oh, okay. So it looks like he might have been discussing some of those differences every so often. It just didn't like register that he was talking about like it was like the same gun, because sometimes it looked like he was talking about something completely different. All right, so this is the Peppermill crank gun. I'm just thinking about the pepper box from Vox Machina right now. Ooh, wee. I get why it's called the
Another gun
Peppermill.
with a great artistic design that doesn't make a huge amount of mechanical sense. The overall design is obviously a Gatling gun, but man-portable, which wasn't really a thing. It's sort of excessively clockwork with the toothed cogs. The breech, I think it's meant to be the breech, is clearly where the rounds are feeding into, somehow firing. The real Gatling has a solid drum of steel, of metal, with bolts that reciprocate on cam tracks back and forth, and each one is in a slightly different position as the drum rotates. One of them is in the forward locked position, and it's tripped and fires, and then the next one hits that, and then the next one hits that, and the next one hits that. It's like an angle of bolts. Look it up, it's really fascinating. So suffice to say, This doesn't seem to work that way at all. We have what looks like spindles or plungers that are in line with each of the barrels, the breeches of the barrels, but they don't move, they don't do anything. It's got ammo coming in, ammo coming out, but the whole bit in the middle is just sort of glossed over. Not uncommon, certainly not for a fantasy setting. There's also a noticeable spool up, which is, now that's the case with electric Gatling guns, to do with how they feed. With a hand-cranked Gatling gun, as soon as you trip that first barrel and bolt arrangement, fire a shot. Well, yeah, as soon as that hits the firing position, it fires. So yeah, there's going to be a slight delay, but I think they're mirroring the spool up of an electric Gatling gun with a hand crank, when I don't think it would be so noticeable. But it's still a nit. It's still very much a nitpick. Okay, and
Floating.
This is maybe the most curious weapon in the game. It's a rocket launcher of sorts with a hand-cranked feed mechanism of some kind. I'm not really sure how it's supposed to work, but I guess the idea is it gives you a rate of fire without showing a manual reload, which they show for the grenade launcher, albeit you get multiple shots out of that before you have to do it. Yeah, it's not the usual arrangement of grenade launcher, rocket launcher. It's its own thing. It must be the biggest departure from reality in the whole game, though, given that the typical rocket launcher is a simple tube open at both ends with some sort of firing mechanism, and this is vastly complicated, but no more so than other games that we've looked at.
That's kind of cool that like this particular thing is the most complicated and weird thing in the game. That's interesting. I wonder why they did it that way.
Those were the guns of Bioshock Infinite. And I know this is heresy, but it's the only Bioshock game that I have actually played. So I will fix that at some point, I promise. Meantime, check out our social media accounts over at Royal Armouries, via the website or however you'd like to do it. And you can, of course, visit us in real life and see some pretty cool Bioshock Infinite firearms on display in our First World War gallery, where we have a case of experimental stuff. So hope to see you there, and if not, we'll see you here next week.
All right. Well, that was interesting. And again, I do enjoy the Bioshock series. And like, that's fun. I enjoy the Bioshock series. I enjoy learning about things that like I never have any cause to really know too much about. So like I've never known too much about guns, in general. Like I didn't grow up around them really. It is interesting to learn about them though. My grandfather had this like ancient Civil War gun that he kept in the garage mostly, and that was cool. It's like I like old things. I like learning about how like the progression of stuff, about like how we learned like new techniques, and I'm like all of that is interesting to me. I'm not going to turn this into I'm not going to talk about like the morals of guns or anything, because they in and of themselves I do find them very interesting, and it's fascinating to me to like see how something works in a video game versus how it would work in real life and like what's it based on, and all of that has always been interesting to me as well. So I'm really glad that I've seen this series. If there's anybody else, anything else from him specifically you want me to look at, please let me know. I might have to look at some of the other people on the channel as well, because you know, some of those, like they talked about that, or there was an armor guy. I want to talk about the swords, like all of that. Very fun for me. I'm looking forward to exploring this channel a lot more. So thank you for everybody who did suggest it. And if there's, again, something else that you want to let us make us watch, either put it in the comments below. You could also join our Discord. The link for that is in the description box. And it's gonna, I'm looking forward to this whole new world opening up to me. And if you can subscribe to the channel, I know you can subscribe to the channel. That's easy. Just hit the little button. That would help us out immensely. We are trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. We are getting very close. And if you can become a patron, we'd also appreciate that. Sometimes you do get a little bit of an extra priority when it comes to your video getting chosen to be watched. You'll sometimes get extra content. You can also get like our anime reactions. You can see those full length uncut, and you get those early. So lots of little perks if you become a patron, and we appreciate y'all very, very much. Until next time.